Hey, we're recording.
Yes. Oh, yes, I'm ready.
Ready? Jason, you
I'm
ready?
ready.
I'm ready, man. Let's go.
Woohoo! All right. Hey, everybody. This is Stu and David. And this is Phil and Storehouse podcast. And we have an amazing guest today, Jason Valadao. He was our first speaker at the Veterans RE Live Conference. He was a speaker at our War Room Mastermind. Dude's a stud, and we have lots to talk about, and it's going to go lots of different directions, and we're really excited about it. Dave, you want to give him a little bio action intro?
I do. I really do. But first, two questions. Jason, is your 24-hour day the same as my 24-hour day? Because I feel like yours, you get a lot more stuff packed in there.
A lot
than
of people
I do.
ask me that. A lot of people ask me. I was thinking about that as I was coming home and like how much I do get done, because my wife says that all the time. She's like, I don't get it. I think we all have the same amount of time. I think it's just little tricks, and maybe sometimes I'm doing a little extra and I need to take a step back. But it's kind of also why I'm here today, is to see how you guys make it work, because you guys are finding time. You're the trick that you guys have that I don't have yet. You're finding this time to have more time with your kids. I've seen those pictures on Facebook and Instagram. I know what you guys are doing.
If it's not on Facebook, it's not real. So
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, we only post the real stuff on Facebook.
And those are the happy moments too, right? That's why there's not more pictures, because then every other one's like them fighting, and like the violence level is pretty amazing.
But I think we'll talk about that, and I'll talk about how we kind of slow the time down so it works to our advantage. So.
Yeah, for sure. And then just not a question you have to answer right now, but something from a medical perspective. Is there any serum or something you can give to Stuart to kind of make him a little more manly? Like I've already given up on the serum to change his overall appearance, but like the manly thing, I think is.
Dude, I got more gruff than you got right now. What's up?
Dude, my wife made me shave today because she's like, it's not a mustache. Like, I don't know how to define what is happening there, but there was something. Like our podcast with Dave Pierre, when I did that, was the biggest mustache I have ever had.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Well, let's kick this thing off before I digress further. So Jason Valadao is a busy man, as we've already established. He served in the U.S. Navy as a flight officer during Operations Iraqi and Enduring Freedom, and currently as a doctor of family and sports medicine. He also teaches and mentors at several universities, spending time at UC Berkeley as a faculty fellow and volunteer with the football team's coaching staff. Through all this, he also fought and survived cancer, which is absolutely incredible. Since 2009, he has served as an adjunct professor of Concordia University, Irvine's master's degree program in coaching athletic administration. And in 2017, he joined the faculty of the American Academy of Family Physicians Chief Resident Leadership Development Program. If that was a Navy program, there'd be an acronym that would better sum that up, I think. And so ultimately they're helping to develop the physician leaders of tomorrow. His passion for leadership and personal growth led him to become a certified coach, speaker, and trainer, mentoring people on their journeys toward personal growth and development. In 2019, he published his first book, Exceptional Every Day, in which he enables readers to refocus their priorities and design the life they desire. He's an international speaker and helps other people develop an unstoppable mindset. Just incredible. And I think today we're going to talk about, mindset, and what is super interesting is for Veterans Live, as Stu mentioned, you were the first speaker. And one thing that Stu and I mentioned in our previous podcast, it was a gathering of folks to talk about real estate, and every single person talked about mindset. Every single person talked about mindset. And what's interesting is you started your speech, said, hey, I'm not a real estate guy, but I'm here to talk about this mindset thing. And who would have known that it would have been bookended by mindset, and every speaker would have talked about the same topic. It's incredible. So
yeah, no, it was awesome to be invited. I mean, it all started because of guys like you. I mean, it was Stu and Dave, the other Dave that from military to millionaire, that got me connected with Bill. And that was, when I look back on that, I mean, how awesome it would have been to be in St. Louis and to feel that energy, and maybe next year. But I think we made do with what we had. I mean, Zoom worked to the best of its ability, and we made it happen. And I saw a lot of growth from people just from the 2 days. I mean, it wasn't that long, but you could just see people having energy and making it work. And I think it was exciting because I learned a ton about myself, even just by presenting, but kind of neat to be put on the spot and go first. And then have a guy like Walter Bond, a professional NBA guy, that talked about Michael Jordan and The Last Dance kind of the same way that I started it. And so you never know. You never know where you're going to go. And that's why I think part of today's talk is you take charge of every opportunity. And I think that's where things happen in life. I mean, you can always say no and go through a different door and you don't know where it's going to lead to. But I think that's part of how I've gotten to where I'm at. And I don't even feel like I've gotten anywhere yet, but people go like, man, you've done a lot. And I feel like it's just beginning. So.
Well, that leads like right into, so I'm kind of looking at my notes from your talk at the conference, and that goes right into your first bullet point of infinite mindset, and there is no finish line, right? And if you could kind of just expand on that, like from a mindset perspective, what that really looks like. What does that mean?
No, I think it's great that you bring it up because I have two daughters, they're 8 and 10, and they always laugh because on our big whiteboard in our hallway, when you walk out of our house, that's where I write down their daily workout and their daily plan they have to get done. And they're 8 and 10. And I leave them a quote every single day. I used to do voice messages when I was a resident because I'd be working like 100 hours a week and they wouldn't see me sometimes. So they'd play the little voice recorder and hear dad talk. And so for me, I've been saying that to them since they were growing up now. And now they laugh because they're like, Dad, you're always talking about how there's no finish line. Cause I talk about this and people are always signing up for marathons or signing up for triathlons. And I've done my slew of Ironmans and all that. And it's exciting and it's fun and it's a challenge. But I think what happens when you see the people that are suffering from that or people that are trying to lose weight and then they gain the weight back, it's because the problem is the mindset is not infinite. They're thinking about this one event and I'm going to accomplish this one event and then it's over. And it's what I mean by that is it's okay to go out and celebrate. Go have your beer if you're a drinker, go have a pizza, enjoy that you just ran a whole marathon. But then what happens the next day? Because like David asked when we started this at the beginning before we recorded about 24 hours in a day, all those things, right? We each have 86,000 seconds and we make use of those the way we want to. But when it's over, you think about professional athletes, they're already looking towards the next season, right? They win the championship. The next thing is like, oh, we got to think about next year because the moment is fleeting. Like it's awesome you got there. But I think about this t-shirt that a guy gave me named Michael Module, who's one of my private patients with the whole online telemedicine I do. And he runs his own podcast and it's pretty cool. And it's like this game changer podcast. And he does it for like attorneys and he does advertising for attorneys. But he sent me a t-shirt that says never complacent. And that's what it says right on the t-shirt. And I thought, how cool is that? Because it's one thing to be content, happy with where your family's at, what you're doing in your career. But it's another thing to want to strive to do more. And Stu, you put it in my mind during the war room because I wasn't even thinking about it when you said, when you could take back some of the things I talked about, talking about Marcus Aurelius and meditations and how when you and David grow the business that you have right now with Storehouse 310, when you grow it, it's not about putting money in your pocket. That's one thing to get more comfortable in your life ahead so you can take care of your kids and your wife. But really, you're opening up doors for other people to have jobs so they can put food on the table. So by what you guys do, the finish line continues because that's really what a life of service is, right? When we're chasing this why that we're all after, and Simon Sinek was the first one. It starts with why, right? And then he talked about the infinite game. And I kind of talk about my why and purpose in my book. But the whole thing is I have to be looking to tomorrow. And I get it. People are like, dude, you need to settle down. But if you settle down to the amount that makes you feel good, that's great. And those are things I have to work on every day because that's what failure is. Like there's things I did today in my office that I'm like, oh man, I should have done this better. But I'm also looking towards tomorrow because I already know that I'm going to fail. So by knowing that I'm going to fail, I can already plan that, hey, now I can start doing more things. And so I think, the finish, it doesn't stop, man. It doesn't stop until we're done because there's 80-year-olds that are doing stuff that they wish they were doing when they were 20. And there's 20-year-olds that want to do stuff now so that they can still do stuff 20 years from now. So I mean, that's kind of where it goes. I could talk about the finish line analogy all day though.
Yeah, you said a couple things there too that, as I was, listening to your previous speeches through our mastermind and through the Veterans Live and just reading some of the stuff and reading your bio and just getting to know more about you. One thing that keeps popping in my head is, what is that why? Like, why are you this dude that is constantly seeking these things? And really, and what was really curious to me, if you don't mind expounding on after you talk about your why a little bit, is why when you obviously have a ton of connections, a ton of opportunities, you decided to stay Navy? Like what that is just something that really was intriguing to me.
So that's a question I get quite a bit and people think I'm lying. That's the best part. That's what I love about it because that's the humility part, right? Where I can sit back. I don't talk about it. It's kind of like when I got brought into that circle back in 2006, 2007 with some of these guys in the NFL and the NBA that I befriended. And now that I talk to regularly about their mindset, about their growth. And I laugh because it's hard for people to believe, right? Because they put people on these pedestals. And I think what I did when I got thrown into the mix at Berkeley after getting back from Afghanistan, and I was teaching ROTC, and I asked my Navy captain, hey, is it okay if after my day job is done teaching all the ROTC students at Stanford, UC Davis, Berkeley, Cal Maritime, I had 4 universities I was in charge of. He's like, you can do whatever you want when your Navy teaching stuff is done. So what did I do? I went and got another master's degree because I'm like, well, if they're going to pay for school and I can increase my education. And I got brought up to the football office and I met one of the athletic directors and he's like, man, if you want to start tutoring and working with some of our players, have at it. Let's see what you can do with them, teaching them leadership. Because they knew I was a naval officer. And the first guys I worked with, Marshawn Lynch, Deshaun Jackson. I mean, these are guys that people know who they are because of kind of their antics and what they've done. And then that just grew to the UC Berkeley basketball team. And then that grew to people outside of that network, guys from USC, UCLA, other people in the Pac-12 because I was consolidating in California, and it just started growing. And little did I know that I was going to be on a football field standing across from Tiger Woods one day and then get to interview him for my book. I mean, those were just chance things, this whole happenstance. But to answer your question, the thing about it is I always treated all those people like they were just regular people like you and me and service members. That's how I did it. And I know that's how it worked for my network. I never asked them to autograph something. I never asked them, can I have a helmet? Can I have this? Because I have people ask me all the time. And it's kind of sickening. They're like, hey, can you call up Aaron and see if he'll send you a jersey so I can get it signed? And I'm like, that's not how our relationship works. And it won't work that way, man. Like when I got to do my internship with the Lakers back in the late 90s, early 2000s before I joined the Navy, and I got to befriend Kobe Bryant, we became the closest of friends. It's because we were a year apart in age, and he had no one else to relate to on that team with Nick Van Exel, with Shaquille O'Neal, because he was the baby. So you got this guy learning how to tape ankles in sports medicine, and all of a sudden we're buddies, and I'm at his wedding, and I'm getting to know his wife, and then that whole thing shifts for the last 20 years. And so being yourself, I think, is a huge aspect of where you're going to get and the people you're going to surround yourself with. So like today, I mean, we're not really doing a podcast. What we're doing is having a 1-hour personal growth session for all 3 of us and all of your awesome listeners that are tuning in because they know they're going to get something out of it. And so I think for me, it's never been about the diploma on the wall. I mean, you come into my military office, my house, I don't have them up. It's just not me. Nothing against anyone who does that, but my drive is based off that. We're driven on different things. Some people are driven because someone posts something on Facebook and it's a challenge about 25 push-ups every day for a month, and that's how they get driven. For me, it's knowing that I've got to take this chance to do more. The Navy was going to medically retire me when I got diagnosed with breast cancer. And everyone's like, how do you have breast cancer? You're a guy. And they're like, well, it happens. You should look it up. I mean, it does happen. And so they were going to medically retire me. My wife and I had to sit down with them and figure out what was going on. And then I said, give me a chance to beat it. And I went from 180 pounds of muscle down to 135 pounds. And it was disgusting. And it was a mindset thing. And that's kind of what led me to go back to my initial why of I always wanted to be a doctor since I was 9 years old. And that stems from time in Africa. And so like, you don't know. And for me, it's the next step. I'm 40 now. And I feel like there's still a lot more that I can do to serve. And you asked, I did have a chance to leave the Navy at 10 years. I was at Berkeley with the connections, as you mentioned. I got to know Pete Carroll, who was the coach at USC, who ended up going to the Seattle Seahawks. And Pete said, hey, I want to take you with me to the Seahawks to be my director of player personnel and development. And I sat there and I said, this is amazing. I mean, I'm a 30-year-old guy, 10 years in the Navy. But then I sat there and I looked at my wife and I said, well, we have our first baby on the way. And I just got the scholarship from the Navy to go to medical school. And anyone who knows how professional athletics works, you might have a job for a year and then not have a job the next year. So I think part of my conservative nature fell there, but also just education and knowing that I wanted to still serve. There was still a part of me that needed to keep doing the Navy thing. So sorry for the long-winded answer there.
No, that's awesome. And Pete Carroll, what an energy. So I'm a USC, big
my wife
USC
went to
fan,
USC,
right?
so.
Is she really? Yeah, I a bunch of friends went to USC, being a Southern California guy. And
Yeah.
what another just an amazing. That would have been a dynamic duo.
He's an energy man. I mean, he's an energy
gosh.
guy, and whether
Pure
you,
energy.
yeah,
That's awesome.
And I think, something I heard that kind of clicked with me is, everything that you're doing and all these relationships that you're creating and that you're building upon, there's no agenda, right? There's no like, I'll scratch your back if you scratch my back. There's no like, what's in it for me. It's just a genuine relationship, and you're like truly in it to serve and to like help people and grow people. And I think that's really like what goes around comes around, right? There's no expectation of it, but if you live with an open hand, like that leaves room for stuff to come in it,
Yeah. Well,
Um,
and I'll tail back on that. So the thing that you said, and that it made me think, and what it's always been for me, especially with COVID-19 that happened these last 3 months, because a lot of people are suffering with connection right now. And that's really what it is, not connections like I'm connected, but having human connection and being able to have a 15, 20 minute, an hour long conversation with someone, sitting down and breaking bread at the table and actually just talking about life. It goes back to my chapter 4 of my book where I talk about setting your table and like who's at your table. And people have loved that. People have called me about that, asking me to speak at conferences now, just about that chapter and how if we all analyze our lives and who's at our table, it's pretty interesting the people that really matter. And who my challenge on my blog that I sent out yesterday was in the next 72 hours, you have 3 days to call 5 of your closest friends that are not related to you. It can't be your spouse. It can't be one of your children. It can't be your parents or your in-laws. And who can come up with 5 that they could call right now on the spot? Not a text message, not an email, and just a challenge to see where are you connected and what does it mean? And it's authentic, right? You brought up that thing, genuine authenticity, being vulnerable, being open, showing people that you've failed. That's what connects us. Nobody cares really. I mean, yeah, people do on the surface about all the things we've accomplished, but they want to know that you failed so that they can also try and overcome something. I mean, that's how I live my life every day.
That's awesome, man. I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to take your challenge. I'm going to call 5 people.
Go to my website. See that blog from yesterday, man.
Oh,
You got to do it.
I love it. David goes a little bit. He goes like a step further. Like he wants to like bear hug you.
Yeah,
he can't just like talk to you. Like he's gonna like fly and like hug you.
This has been horrible for me. COVID. I'll tell you the biggest challenge for me. Like I'm a touchy guy. I'm a Philly, like I'm a slap on the back, hug you kind of guy. And that has been, this podcast is awesome because it allows us to talk to people like you, and it gives Stu and I some time to chit chat and have some fun, which, laughter is a core value of our company and we just love it. Right. And it also gives me an opportunity to make fun of him, not only between ourselves and with friends, amongst friends like yourself, but to any of our listeners, they get to hear that, which is, I think it's important to see the real side of Stu. But one of the big challenges is that the human connection for me. So Zoom doesn't do it for me because I'm much more of like a sit down, let's break bread. And it's funny because, and Stu, by the way, I better be one of those phone calls. So
that'd be like cheating. It's like cheating, man. I mean, we talk like every single day anyways.
We do, but I think
it might be cheating. I mean, you guys are already brothers. I don't know. I might count it. I'm not sure.
It's true. No, you're right. It's true. It's true. But I think that I think it's such an incredible point in that connections and people, and I see it especially out here with my Navy job. I work with a bunch of introverts. These are cryptologic professionals that just by the nature of who they are, the vast majority of them are introverts, and I worry about them because it's just, even if you're an introvert, you need that connection, that fellowship, and it's such a great point, to make those connections. So I appreciate you highlighting that.
When I love how you talked about the laughter aspect, right? It's a value of your company, but it should be a value of life. Like my daughter, my 8-year-old's had a hard time with this COVID thing because she's such a people person with school and sports, and she was born with a disability. So she wears bilateral hearing aids since she was 6 weeks old. And with her, that connection is so important because she already struggles to hear, especially if her hearing aids are out. And now her whole soccer season got canceled. And so these different things. And so you see the value of people. I mean, this goes back to the whole point of why we're even having this podcast. If we didn't have other people to serve and be connected with, we wouldn't even be doing this. You wouldn't have any listeners if they didn't care what you guys were doing. And so, it goes beyond the whole idea of making money and just having a career, because you can go sit on an island all by yourself. And while that's great for 2 weeks at a time and getting that silence that we all need, is where's the rest of that connection at? And as you know, I mean, we're not doing anything alone in this world. So
it's funny. I think our wives get jealous of us at times, Crystal and Erica, we love you to death, but I think they get jealous because I think we talk to each other more than we talk to our wives sometimes. So, but we do love our wives, I promise.
Very
I love
much,
it.
very much so.
Yeah.
Definitely, and we definitely don't yell at each other as much as we yell at our kids. So
Yeah.
there's a plus there too. There's a plus there too. Hey, so how do you do it? Like you mentioned earlier, like mind tricks to get more than 24 hours in a day and like different things that you do.
You guys should
I
ask
mean,
my wife, man.
guys,
No.
just, and I think but I do think there's some actionable steps
Yes, sir.
and I will be reading your book because, I know that it's chock full of actionable steps
I've
and
already read it. I've already read it. What's up?
Jeez.
see, this is what I'm talking about. See, people see this,
Boy.
Stuart. They see this, Stuart. But how do you, how do you do it?
So here's one thing that I think I've lived by for a long time. And I know it's easier said than done, but I really don't put things off for tomorrow if I can get them done today. And that's 90% of the time. That's really good. Other times you could consider that you're rushing into something, right? So it's a little different than buying a piece of real estate and saying like, oh, I got to buy this today because as you guys know better than I do, that negotiation tactic and that scarcity mindset time sometimes can benefit you because maybe they're going to drop their price or something or those things. But in terms of 90% of what we do in our life, washing the dishes, brushing our teeth, packing our bag for tomorrow, 90% of the stuff I feel like you can just get it done now and then it's done, right? So I thought about it last night. So my wife for 3 months has not gotten her hair done, right? So she's getting mad at me because she's older than I am. She's pissed at the world. She's like, look, this is the only time they can get me and I'm going at 6 o'clock at night. And that's not normal for our family. We sit down as a family, we have dinner, all those things, right? But the girls were just with me. It was great. They wanted to play the game of life. And I hadn't played it with them yet. And it was like surreal. I'm not making this up. One of them loves singing. She plays piano. She pulls out the first card and she goes, Dad, do you want career or do you want college career? So career is like right away, right after high school, or do you want college career? And out of the three of us, I'm the only one that picks college career. But college career, it takes an extra like 15, 20 minutes before you get your first payday. So both my kids are already getting paid their salaries. The 8-year-old actually drew a card and she got professional athlete, but it was only paying $50,000 annual salary, which is really low as we know. The older one got singer, and I don't know how it happened. I swear to you guys, I got doctor out of the whole thing. It was really funny. So at the end of the game, we're adding up the money. I'm the only one that owned a piece of real estate and I had a lot of money. And they're like, so going to college really does help, Dad. I said, well, 90% of the time, because when you're someone like Kobe or LeBron, they went to college. High school was basically their college, right? But, to get back to what you're saying, how do I get it done? You build these routines into your life. Like I already know every single day that I'm going to work out. Like whether that's a 30-minute yoga workout, an hour on the bike, an hour in the swimming pool, or lifting weights, it's going to happen. It's already built into my plan and there's no excuse. Like whatever. And that's just true. I've done that because I write down every workout that I've done as well in my calendar. I've done that for 15 years now. My wife goes, there's a stack of these in the bedroom. Like, what are you doing? But literally every day, if I did 100 push-ups plus an hour bike ride or whatever, because I already know to myself that, and my bag is packed every night before I go to work. My lunch is always packed, whether I'm doing intermittent fasting that day and not eating, or whether I'm going to do lunch and an afternoon snack. It's already done. It's not even a question. And I think that's how I can do more. I mean, to give you guys a little perspective right into my world right now as a Navy doc. I'm in charge of officer candidate school, officer development school, which is where the lawyers and doctors come and the chaplains. But I also have the Naval Academy prep school. Luckily, they're not here right now because of COVID. So they graduated. The new classes come in next month. But I have all those students plus the Naval War College, and I'm the only sports medicine doc for the entire New England area covering all that. So about 3,000 patients on any given day. And how do I make that work? So this morning I go in, I'm up at 4:30, felt good, went for a swim, worked out for a while, opened my clinic door at 6:30. I saw 12 patients in the next 2 hours. Like bam, bam, bam. Also took care of a couple online things because I do a couple side jobs. Took care of those, had a couple meetings, and knew that in the back of my mind, I got to get all this done. And at 4 Eastern, I got to be able to jump on a podcast with you guys. And I got home about 3:15, gave me enough time to see my kids, my wife, put some things away. All my stuff from lunch is already washed. My bag is ready for the next day. And I'm ready because I want to be fully present as well, right? Because if we don't plan and we don't have a routine, number one, we're not going to get the stuff done, but I can't be fully present in this podcast. My cell phone's turned off right now. I've got no notifications on the computer. The windows are closed. Like I'm fully here with you guys because that's what today is about. And so I think, building routines and knowing that you can get it done. And it's part of the game. You're going to fail sometimes. You may not get it all done, but that's what a to-do list does for me is it tells me The stuff that I need to get done has to be at the top. And then the extras, like say I wanted to write an extra blog post tonight for next week's blog, that's an extra. If I can get to it, that's great. If not, I'll do it tomorrow. And so, you make deadlines for yourself, I think is part of my trick.
Yeah,
So the actionable step is setting a calendar, right? I mean, do you put it on a Google Calendar so you see it on your phone and get reminders? Do you have like a notebook?
Yeah,
like
I'm crazy, dude. I like to carry the old leather. It looks like a football. It's just me, man. I know. I love it. So I have this calendar, which has it has the box. So, it's got the boxes, and I put in what I did that day. That's kind of my end of day. And the reason I do that is I reflect every month. So I take the last weekend of the month and I spend about 30, 40 minutes looking back on the month. So for today, it says, when we're done with this, it'll say podcast with Stu and David, and then, and everything else, my workout for the day, any calls I had with other people, my connections that I've made. Like yesterday it said, spoke to brother Dave. I have a guy who's like an adopted brother to me, and I wrote that I spoke with him for 30 minutes. And I use that to reflect so I can look back on the month and go, wow, this is what happened in May. This is pretty awesome. I got all this done. I mean, and I'm not boasting. Don't take it this way. This is for myself. But last month, I did 9,431 push-ups for the month, and 2,100 pull-ups. And so I'm on day 570 in a row of not missing a day of push-ups and pull-ups. Now, some days I might do 10, some days 100, but that's part of my kind of why and purpose is it keeps me driven. It's just a little thing. And, but I write it down, and then I have my little journal that I write in every day. This is where I do one page of writing per day. I've been doing that for 3.5, 4 years now. And then I write down, I have a little to-do list. You can use a calendar. I mean, when I have meetings, it gets put in a Google Calendar and things, but I really think for me, writing it down makes such a difference. It's like setting your goals. If you write it down, you're more apt to do it. So.
I love that, man. It's there's two books that come to mind. The Miracle Morning. Have you read that one by Howard? Just kind of like starts your day off right. Those like 4 or 5 things to do like every single morning. And then David and I have talked about it a bit. Is Atomic Habits. Have you read that one?
Yeah, great book.
Yeah. That's a good one too.
That's what I was just thinking about as you were saying that, because for our listeners out there, and I think when people hear someone of, just you're high performing and knocking stuff out, and, it's not accidental. And I imagine when you started it, you weren't doing all this stuff was not just a natural thing. You didn't start out doing that, right? You started out and you made these incremental steps, and you built incrementally, a lot like, Atomic Habits comes to mind, and built these little habits and started habit stacking and just created this overall routine that helps you get to success. And the best part is success for you, as you highlighted earlier, is not a finish line, right? There is no finish line. It just, you keep pushing that finish line further.
Well, and I think realizing that it's okay that if today doesn't go perfectly, it's fine. Part of that is, you just said it, what works and figuring out what doesn't. So there's something in my day today at work that just didn't go right, and stepping back and thinking, I could have done this better. And then how can I make this better? It's kind of, it's that routine of, okay, you do this over and over again, insanity, and you expect something different, but you get the same result. You're doing it every day. And so, that could be anything from how you're eating. You ate something, it didn't make you feel good, and then you ate it again, and you kept going back to it. But you're like, that doesn't work. I do that. I mean, we're all in that boat. So recognizing that it's okay, or my kind of mantra with patients who I'm helping to lose weight with the sports medicine type realm that I work in, I say, look, I want you to have 5 really good days a week, and then Saturday can be like a cheat day. Have a meal that's whatever you want. And I guarantee you, your results are going to be a lot better than someone who tells them they're going to go 6 straight months and they clean eat perfectly. They're mostly the patients that bounce back and then they plateau and they gain the weight back. And so if you build in those little things where you can slip and fall, you're going to catch yourself. I mean, it might hurt sometimes, but that's how we learn from it. And so, and that's why we're here talking about this stuff, because nothing is perfect. If it was, the 3 of us probably wouldn't be on the podcast if we had it all figured out and we had nothing to grow ourselves. I mean, that's
there's no value add.
There's no value add.
Yeah. And just, you hit on one thing. There's so much in that last, that last part, so many actionable items, but one thing you mentioned is, brushing your teeth. Do you schedule that in? Because that's something I've been trying to get Stu, really plug him into.
He's got it, dude. He's got pearly whites though.
Look at those things. He's got that aviator smile. Look at that thing.
I take a shower like once a week. Yeah. Once a week I take a shower. It's all good.
Build that into the calendar.
Yeah. let's talk about your book a little bit. Let's talk about
Yeah.
the process. Let's talk about like kind of what is the process?
Yeah, so it's a lot of what we've been talking about, just with a name put in front of it, right? Because really what it comes down to is you both have brought up this idea of how do you get so much done? It gets done because they're priorities in my life. That's what the process and what I talk about in my chapters are the 10 major priorities. So like you, chapter 1, this whole idea about you, it's not about you being a conceited individual. It's you got to take care of yourself before you can. You guys know this. You can't function as a good team member. I mean, you guys and your man crush that you have on one another, it doesn't work if you guys don't take care of you. I mean, if Stu doesn't brush his teeth, then David can't, he's not going to want to be around you. And then David's wife's going to get mad because Dave's mad at Stu. So but no joke, trying to get the joke aside. We take care of ourselves, right? By me working out every morning at 4:30, maybe 5:30, I already know that if the workout's done and I feel good, that's my energy for the day. Then I don't have to sacrifice missing dinner with my 2 daughters who need me around for me to build that legacy with them. Because I know a lot of people who are like, oh, I work out right after work and I just skip dinner most nights of the week. I don't see my family. That doesn't work for me. It's not a priority, man. Like our kids are so dependent on us to set them up because I'll tell you, especially when you look at a time like COVID, they're not going to school. They're not with their teachers all the time. We have the biggest impact on our children. They watch everything that we do. And so for me, when I do that, that's the priority of me, right? So that's one thing. And I have chapters called like figure out your why, setting your table, your spirituality, your health, your wellness, how you eat, your routines. All of those things are the process. The process is different for all of us, but really the same because we've got to figure out what are the priorities. If you don't take care of yourself and if you don't shower and you don't brush your teeth and you don't eat right, you're going to end up at the hospital. You're going to end up seeing doctors and that's not good because now it takes you away from serving your why. And that's the number one frustration. I've met people now in the last couple of years, ever since my book and my ideas came. I talk to patients in the hospital and I try to get them motivated about getting out of the hospital, getting home. And they're like, gosh, if I would have done this, I would have never lost 7 days of my life sitting in a hospital bed. If I would have done this better or done this. And I lost my dad to lung cancer. My dad was great. He was fit. He was 59, didn't speak English very well, but he had a really good work ethic. And he had a goal of getting back to the Azores Islands in Portugal where he came from. But he never got to realize it because he was 6 months away from doing it. Even though he only made $8 an hour as a janitor, he put that money away for years. He sold firewood as a second job, but he smoked since he was like 16 and he smoked a lot. And then he never knew that it was going to do that. He never took a medication like his whole life. And then bam, in 8 weeks, he died from lung cancer. And so, all of it can flash. So we've got to make good decisions. And so, but the book was really a product of finding a way that anybody age 16 to 80 could pick it up and have an easy read. As you know, Stu, I mean, I tried to write it at a 3rd grade level so you could read it. That was the whole,
Thanks, man.
I thought about it,
I appreciate it.
I mean, so David's going to be able to do it for sure.
I don't know. I don't know.
But no, and you read it. I put the questions at the end of each chapter because the book isn't about me. And as you know, as someone who read it, when I wrote it and when I went through the vetting process of the Navy, like I couldn't talk about deployments. They wanted me to really limit how much I talked about cancer and about Africa because I'm still on active duty. So there's a lot of red tape when you're on active duty, unlike my boy, David Goggins, who can write about everything and sell like 1 million copies because of what he's gone through. He's not on active duty anymore. So it's different. But I wanted something to pick up and people could apply right away. And they could read a chapter a day and then say like, hey, I can start working on this. And they can start planning out their life. And so that was kind of my take on it. And that's kind of the gist or the overall of what the process is about.
Yeah. And I think it's fantastic. Those questions at the end, it really forces you to really think about, your own process, like my own process. And there's actionable steps that you can take to actually make a change for the better, to improve that process, and think about your why and think about like all the things that are important to you. I mean, it's fantastic, man. I think it's great.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where do you, where do you go from here? What does the future look like? What are the goals? Like what is, Jason?
There's no finish line, dude. There's no finish line.
Dude, no, that's tough, man. No, so that is the hardest question. I remember doing a book signing back at Camp Pendleton Oceanside last year, about a month after the book came out. And I got asked that. They had me do a little panel discussion with people in the store. And this guy who I didn't know came from like Encinitas. He's got money, like he's a big CEO or something. And he got invited by a guy that I did a podcast with. And so he asked me that question in front of everyone. He's like, so what's next when the Navy's done? And I'll be honest, I mean, people look at me and they shake their head. They're like, dude, that's like nothing. Why do you want to do that? So I'll be honest. One of my passions is to become like an NFL or NBA team doctor. That's been something, but I don't know. I guess, and a lot of people see that and they go, but you've done all this already. Why just that? So to take a step back, I was supposed to be one of the team doctors at your guys' alma mater last year, but they canceled my orders in good Navy fashion. Orders in hand, house already picked on the academy campus. You know, like my wife had everything done because we have a special needs kid, so it was all set up. And then the specialty leader calls me and goes, dude, you got to replace me and take over the job in Newport. And I was like, you're going to cancel my orders to the academy. And he's an academy alum. I said, I never got to go to the academy, man. Let me live that dream out.
Yeah.
And so he sent me, he goes, well, I'll give you the next best thing. You'll have the Naval Academy prep school kids. Well, that's a whole different adventure. So the next step. So what do I see myself doing? So the number one thing for me, I'm 40 right now. I owe the Navy a few more years because of med school. I want to be able to spend a lot more time with my kids, because I know that if I can spend more time with my kids, I can be a better service to society. And my dad always told me, you need to give more to society than you take. That's something that I think about all the time. I preach that to my kids as they think about what they're doing at school and when they're nice to their fellow classmates. And if someone drops something, picking it up for them, and always not being a taker, but being a giver. That's my number one thing. So what does that look like now? I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. Like I've talked to my wife, like, do I look at education because I value it? Do I go and try to be a president of a university one day? Do I do the NFL thing? I've got buddies right now. My buddy who's a coach at UC Berkeley now, he talks about, hey, when the Navy's done in a couple of years, if I end up in the NFL, he's the head coach there. I'd love you to join us, and not as a doctor, as part of the team in a different way. And so is that what it looks like? I don't know for sure. I mean, I love talking. I love going in front of groups and doing that. But I think whatever it is, I have to know that I'm having a daily impact, or I'm not going to fulfill myself. And that's where you fall into the crutch of depression, anxiety, and especially as a service member, man. I'm talking to some of my guys getting out now that have only been in for 4 or 5 years, and they're looking at the outside. And it's a treacherous road, because you get used to the camaraderie. You get used to putting on the uniform. You get used to living a life of service where it's not about you. And when you do take that oath, and we've done it a couple times because we've promoted throughout our career now. And every time we promote, we're taking that oath over and over. It's neat that we have to do that. That you don't just take your oath at commissioning or when you enlist, but you're taking that new oath when you get a new rank, because it's resetting that mindset, right? It's like, oh, now I remember why I'm here. Because it's easy to forget when you go on a deployment on an aircraft carrier or a small boy, or you do a land-based deployment. It's easy to forget when you come back the struggle that other people have made. And so I think overall my goal is to make people's lives easier, to help add value to people. I always want to do that no matter what it is. And I think that's where the finish line, you can always do that. Like there is no finish line in that, right? Because I was mentored by a guy the other day who's 82 years old. And I was mentored by someone else who was 10 years younger than me. You know, you guys are younger than I am, and you're giving me some mentorship now, and hopefully it's being reciprocated. And that's what we're trying to do. So I don't know, man. I mean, that's what's hard, because I still owe the Navy a couple years, and people are like, oh, you should stay and be an admiral in this. But I'll be honest, I don't know if I'll be practicing medicine in 5 to 10 years. I mean, yeah, it was a lot of work to get there after being a naval flight officer, and now this, and people look down on me with that. It's crazy, but I take it with a grain of salt, and I'm like, wow, they're telling me that I'm crazy because I may not be doing medicine, but there's so much more, and we can have such an impact. And I used to think being a doctor was the only way to really take care of people. There are so many ways to do it. Like, I got enough humility to know that. I mean, I'm in one profession right now, but there's a lot of other things.
Yeah, and you're feeding us right now, right? Like I'm getting like tingling, I'm getting fired up, I'm getting ready for my PT, and and I think it's a huge important point that the influence, I think people oftentimes do two things with influence. One, they underestimate the power of influence. And two, they underestimate their power of influence. You are influencing every single day, right? And it's either positive or negative, and you have an opportunity. And what I find interesting, I try and tell all my leaders in the wardroom and the mess and the most junior sailor, hey, somebody's watching you. Somebody's watching you to learn what right looks like and what they should do. And for as long as you don't acknowledge that, that's for as long as you're disservicing yourself and not realizing that you are a power of person and influence. And I think there's so much power in that. And you have obviously recognized that. And so I would say to all the haters and the doubters and people that look at you any which way, I appreciate the fact that you just shrug that off and ignore it, because I think you've got that secret sauce, right? You've got the tapping into that mindset. And if you can change somebody's mindset, just like you said, it can be life-changing to lose weight. It could change everything about somebody's, how they view themselves and empower them to do things. And there's a lot of power in that. And I think that's incredible.
Yeah, I think, and something I know you guys will eat up. There's this part about mindset that I think you don't want to overlook. And they're not perfect. We don't meet them, but there's these 4 things I think that go with mindset that I didn't talk about at the Veterans Conference. And so I had my girls write this on the whiteboard because I want to see if they could memorize. And this was a couple nights ago. And I took this from Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday, who happens to be a private patient of mine. And Ryan's great. He writes amazing books. Ego is the Enemy, Obstacle is the Way. He's always talking about Marcus Aurelius. But in it, he writes mindset. And he writes, never in a hurry. So live your life like this. Never in a hurry, never worried, never desperate, and never stopping short. Never in a hurry, never worried, never desperate, and never stopping short. And obviously, when you guys look at that, you're like, oh, I've been in a hurry. I get worried. I've felt desperate before, and that's okay. When I grasped that and I was giving my girls this little teaching tonight, because I do my own little 15, 20-minute masterminds with an 8 and a 10-year-old. It's pretty funny, man. But these kids can go talk to anybody now. Like, my girls can meet anybody, and they're like, holy cow. And they come to some of my talks. Like, I've been invited with CEOs for their companies. I remember and they're like, hey, your girls can sit in if they want. And these are like 300-400 people in a room, and they're getting to see dad do it. And it's cool because, like, I told them these 4 things the other night, and it just made me think. I'm like, yeah, I'm in a hurry sometimes, but really, if I work on not being in a hurry and I make it part of my day, how much more of an impact, how much more influence can I actually give? When my corpsmen up in my sports clinic don't see me rushing and actually taking 5 minutes to teach them, when I pull out my ultrasound machine and I'm putting it on someone's shoulder to see if they have a rotator cuff tear, and I go, hey, HN so-and-so, come in, I want to show you this. Or I hand them the needle and say, look, I'm going to guide you, but you put the injection in. The empowering process that gives someone, that energy, that whole, see one, do one, teach one. I mean, that's what influence is. That's what the impact we're having. And David, you brought it up. People are watching us all the time. I told my daughters the other night, you have no excuse ever to be rude to anybody, because you can simply walk away or bite your tongue. You have no excuse, but we've all done it. I mean, we've all been rude to one another in this podcast in a fun-loving way, of course. But, I mean, that's the whole thing, man. It's like we really have no excuse, especially as leaders and people of influence, to ever really be rude to people. It's one thing to joke when you're in that circle of influence and circle of trust, but we don't have a right to be rude, because we can always turn the other cheek and do better. And when we start to take these things and every day look at the process of, I can be better than I was yesterday. That's the premise of the book. That's simply what the process is all about, is can I be better than I was yesterday in at least one thing? And that's what I ask readers to do, or when I try to motivate people. It's, can you find, and they're like, oh, why do I have to try to be better every day? I'm like, just something, whether it's better the way you interact with your spouse, whether you're a better dad and you didn't yell at your kids, whether you were more efficient in writing your notes in the clinic, or did you, decide you're going to go read an extra 10 pages out of a book today? And I said, so the mindset of, I'm going to get better at least one thing tomorrow. And I drive myself with that all the time, because it's like a constant challenge. I don't need to go sign up anymore and go pay $100 to be in a race just because I need to go compete with other people. I need to compete with myself first. And I think that is the driving thing. If you can compete with yourself, then I give you a little more leeway if you want to go sign up for all these races and compete with people. But if you can't compete with yourself and push yourself to do more, then, I mean, really, you got to take a couple extra seconds and think about that.
Do you think that this can be learned, or do you think that there are people that inherently have this trait in them already, that inherently are going to be those leaders that are doing this process, that have this mindset, this infinite mindset? Or is this something that can be learned just through being around people and books and stuff like that?
So I think that's great, because yes, you do have people that are born with a certain way, right? It's our personality, and we're driven. And I mean, there's, as you know from your background, there's people that can go to flight school and make it, and there's people that can't. There's people who can go to the Naval Academy and make it in that rigorous environment, and people who can't. But I do think everything can be learned. And I'll tell you why I believe that, because I've seen it for 20 years in the Navy now. I have met countless people. I just had a conversation with one the other night who failed out of 3 different high schools. And now he's 25, he's in the Navy. And he came to me because he goes, hey, Doc, I heard from the other corpsmen that you're really good about your finances and that you don't overspend every month and that you believe in this whole thing of spend less than you make, you know, and like all these. And so I think it can be learned. It's through books, it's through podcasts, it's through people. Mentorship alone, just having someone who's willing to take their time to sit and talk with you is a huge game changer. Like, you know, people think I'm crazy because I would say 80%, and I should do better. That's part of the marketing and selling yourself better, but I'm not into that right now. I want to maintain who I am. 80% of what I do in the executive coaching world for professional athletes, and we all know they can afford it, I do for free because of the setup that I've had before. And those guys, because for me, it wasn't about that. And I think that's what makes them come back. They're like, dude, this guy really doesn't want my money. He actually cares about spending an hour with me once a month, you know, talking. And then when one guy, like it happened recently, records a video of him saying happy birthday to my kids, and he's a big star in the NFL, how cool is that? That is priceless, man. I mean, without any solicitation, you know, and then they send a jersey to one of the girls and they're like, signed, you know, so-and-so Super Bowl champion. And you're like, I didn't ask for any of it. And so I think we lost Dave for a second.
We sure did.
But, you know, I think that it is learned, Stu, and we know there's so much growth that can happen. There's so many books, so many podcasts, so much out there for us, but we got to make the time.
Yeah.
And it takes time. You're not going to do it overnight. It's a growth process.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's
I think Dave, he stepped away to go do some personal growth right now. He
just went to go like get like 1,000 push-ups in right now. No, that's great, man. I agree 100%. I think, you know, as you realize that, you know, that you start putting yourself into those situations, you start putting yourself in those groups of people that are going to push you and that are going to make you better.
Exactly.
And you know, that's all on you. You know, that's your decision that you have to make. To get yourself into a mastermind, to go to those meetups,
exactly,
to listen to those podcasts and those books. And I think it's absolutely learned. And I think if you know, just the kicker is surrounding yourself around those people, you know, that are more successful than you, that are doing things that you want to do. Yeah, I think that's huge, man. I think that's huge.
Yeah, and Stu, you touched on it earlier. You said the agenda-free giving and or the agenda-free just the way you do things.
Yeah.
And I think you just hit on that too. You know, as you talk through a couple things that, you know, there's certain perceptions that I think are incredible that you're breaking down, right? So professional athletes, they're people.
Exactly.
It was something I learned a long time ago through, and it was more faith-based, you know, through church. Like, hey, there's one person that you should idolize, and that's Jesus, right?
Exactly.
That was my personal faith and growth. So I always grew up. I've never gone to games and asked for autographs because that was something that was really just built in. But I think that you hit on the point that they're all just people, right? And the fact that you are spending time with these guys to even at that level, they are earning and they're gaining and they're being surrounded by someone like you, and that will pay back in some way, right? When you have that strong why, when you have that mindset, the abundance mindset, you don't have to charge for everything. I talked to a guy, tried to convince him to come speak at Veterans Live event. And the first question he asked me was, hey, you know, how am I going to be compensated? I'm like, well, everybody's doing it for charity. But immediately I was like, I'm not interested in
not the right person.
Not the right person, right?
No, I love how you said that because you brought up something too that people always ask me because I didn't play college football, right? Like I didn't play college football. I played some college sports. I grew up soccer, basketball. But my thing isn't even – because people will go, hey, can you get me tickets to the game? Can you do this? Because that's what's happened in the last 10 years. I mean, and then when I became a doctor, it was even more that way, right? And then you start to realize who are your real friends. And I still want to help these people even though I'm like, what are they after now? But for me, it's never been that. Like, to be honest, it's pretty wild. For me, I love seeing people perform at their absolute level. And so when I get to see people do that, that's what I get my why fulfilled because I'm helping them grow. But I just love seeing people perform the best they can. And it translates well to medicine because when I take care of a patient, I want to see them not be sick. I want to see them lose weight. I want to see them get off their diabetes medications. I have a patient right now who recently lost 80 pounds over the last 8 months since her and I started working together. And it's awesome. She's reverse diabetes, man. And it helps me sleep better at night. And so I love seeing people perform. That's really what my gist is. I mean, that's where it came from. I was lucky that I walked into a situation where the Navy didn't even want me to go to UC Berkeley to be an RTC instructor. They said, that's going to ruin your career. And I was supposed to go to Fallon and be an instructor at Top Gun and do all that stuff. And I took a leap of faith and took that job. And I mean, the only place that would have been better for football is when I had a choice between Berkeley and Notre Dame, but something told me to go to Berkeley.
You made the right choice, dude. You made the right choice. Yeah, we don't do Notre Dame.
No, yeah, we don't like Notre Dame.
See, I cut you off at risk of being rude. You mentioned Notre Dame. Didn't even want to hear about it.
But I just love seeing people perform at their level. And whether that's, watching someone who loves, like Bill from Veterans Life, if he loves flipping houses every week, dude, that's awesome. Keep doing it. I want to see you make that even better than it is right now. Make that platform better, because I know you're going to have an effect on even more people. So that's what keeps me going.
But that also, those guys talk, right? They have their circles and they talk, and your name is going to be brought up. Hey man, I talked to this guy, Jason, today, and he didn't ask me for my autograph, whatever the conversations they have. And I think that influence, that mindset, the abundance, the non-selfish, no agenda is leaps and bounds expounding and multiplying your level of influence. And that's, I think that's a testament to the process and to who you are. So thank you for sharing that.
Hey, Jason, I've been in a search. I've been searching for a new best friend for quite some time now.
And you can't take that. But before we hit record,
my wife messes with me all the time, because I got buddies, a lot of them that are like, dude, that's like your man crush right there. So that happens a lot. So hey, I'm open for new ones.
Are you open? Because I'm looking for one.
I got to learn this real estate thing somewhere. So
call me, maybe.
That's good. Shameless.
Yeah, that's what I do. Well, cool. We're hitting close to the hour mark, and I mean, we could probably talk for another hour or two.
Easy.
Maybe we'll just turn this into the Jason Valadao podcast.
I don't know, guys.
Getting fired up. Get me fired up.
No, it's good.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
And this is kind of one of our standards.
Got it.
What is one piece of advice that you would give to another service member to do what you're doing?
Yeah. So I think we hit on it a few times. Don't limit yourself. So, and what do I mean by that? How do you make that actionable? It's easy for me to say on a stage, don't limit yourself. And then they leave and then it's over. They forget. Go start writing things down. When an idea comes to your mind, whether that's an idea about, things you're grateful for today, or a job that you might be interested, or if you want to go out and, go back to school and get an education, write it down now. It doesn't matter if you actually do it next month, next year, but start making this flow of ideas. And I kind of look at it as like the old school servers in a restaurant, where they used to write down like all the food you're going to get. And it's a little like charge slip, but it's got everything on it. But just take something with a notepad like that with lines on it. And as you think of things like, hey, that would be a great idea for a podcast. Or I just saw so-and-so talk, maybe we should ask him sometime. And then you can always cross it out later. But why do I say that with use as an example? That's the not limiting yourself philosophy. Like my wife is great at coming up with all these ideas, but the issue is she's afraid to go find a way to get money or someone to invest in doing it. She was an investment banker before. So like that, and it's like, well, why not? Like you got to take those chances sometimes, but so be willing to take risks, have a lot of humility, and know that a lot of life is based on luck. Like so you guys know this, someone else could have taken one of your spots from the state when you got your letter to go to the Naval Academy. There's luck involved. You could have had a 4.0, your dad could have been in the military, but there's also luck that your number or your name got drawn to go. And, and those things, I think if you can live your life based on the fact that, the best advice is try to get better at something every day and don't limit yourself, I think you're going to do amazing things. Because people are always going to try to tell us we can't do something.
Right. Yeah. And Stu, I agree with you 100%. Stu got super lucky to get in. Like, I don't even know how it got through the admissions board, to be quite honest with you. But I mean, you set that up. I'm not being rude.
Awesome.
I'm not being rude at all. It's, sometimes truth is painful, but it'll set you free. So that's good. That's good.
I actually
Real quick.
have in my notebook here from your Veterans Live conference, stars all around it. Become an idea machine. And I mean,
Yeah, see?
I love it, man.
Keep
Become an
writing it
idea
down,
machine.
man.
Stars, circles, like it was.
And I'm not good at that. I'm trying to be. I'm really not. It's something I've just never. And I say this all the time. I'm not. I don't feel like I'm very creative. I'm finding my creative space now. You know, I wrote a book. I wish I played a musical instrument. Luckily, my daughters do. My daughter, one plays piano, one plays violin. My wife now is learning how to play cello, and she's 44. And so, like, that was her Christmas gift off Amazon for $180. I'm like, that's all
awesome.
for cello, because those are like $5,000. And so, but it's being creative. And so, me writing and stepping out of my introverted comfort zone and doing podcasts now and being more comfortable in my skin. I think that's the way that, because I know I can help people, and it's not about, so I think there's a lot of ways.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. How can our listeners get in touch with you?
Yeah, so easy way. And I've got a lot of free resources. That's kind of why I built the compendium that I did on my website. But I got a blog. It's my first name, last name.com. So Jason Valadao. Be careful on how you spell the last name because it's easily misspelled. But you guys both said it right, so I'm pretty impressed. .com. And that's where I've got my weekly blog that I do, put newsletters together. I've got a ton of free resources from the book, from health and wellness stuff, exercises, nutrition stuff, tons of stuff, easy to download. They're all PDFs. That's one way. I do Instagram, Facebook stuff, but it's more because of the book and everything. And I really try to streamline it, make it stuff that's actionable too. And then Amazon is a great place for the book. They've always got discounts on the book. We have the ebook version and the hardcover. We're looking at trying to get someone who's, I did the book on my own, which wasn't easy to pay for. I got a publisher. They're awesome. They do a lot of thought leadership, but I still invested in that. My wife goes, you never spend any money on yourself, so don't worry about it. And I put a good chunk in there, and I probably will never get it back in terms of that, but that's not why I did it, right? I did it about having an influence on people, and it was a legacy for my 2 kids. But people have said, hey, you need to do an audiobook, man. You got to get somebody to invest in you, because an audiobook's only like $1,500. But once you make it, and so I'm looking at ways that if I do an audiobook, because I thought if I did an audiobook, how cool would that be for people that are blind? People that don't read, because a lot of people don't read books. People are commuting in their cars or sitting in the subway. And I thought, wow, what if I did that and I just donated all of those proceeds 100% to some kind of organization? And after doing Veterans Live 2-3 weeks ago, it's making me think even more that maybe that's the way to go. And because I didn't do it for the money anyway. I mean, yeah, I'd love to have more, but I've got my wife, my 2 kids, everybody's healthy. And, I'm a worker. I don't mind going to work. I'd like to have more time to go camping and stuff. I know that's what you were off doing recently. So
let's just set that right now.
Let's do it, man.
On this podcast, you're gonna do an audiobook, and David and I are gonna hold you accountable to it.
Okay.
We're gonna check in with you. How long is it gonna take?
Now I got to find the right. They say it would take about 10 hours to record it. See, that's not much.
That's not much.
I was told I should also do it. I should do the voice. I should have my own voice, not someone else. That's what a lot of people have told me. I hate my own voice, but I guess they said it would be.
It's like silk. It's like silk.
Yeah. Silk.
Well, when we become best friends, I'm gonna call you and I'm gonna check up on you.
Hey, Stu, one of the things that Jason said about mindset: never be desperate.
Yeah.
All right. Never
Don't be desperate.
Yeah.
Wait. So, Dave, did you say you like USC? Is that what I heard?
I do. Big fan of USC. Yep. Big fan of USC.
I'll pass that on to the boss, even though you went to the academy. That's good to know.
Yeah. Big USC fan. Big Raiders fan. Big Marshawn Lynch fan for what he does for the Vegas.
He does a lot for Oakland.
Vegas now, but he does a lot for Oakland. Before my father passed, I was able to take him to a game, a home game in Oakland. It was one of the coolest experiences.
That's awesome.
Because I grew up. When I was growing up, we used to go to LA to the Coliseum to watch them there in LA. But I got to take my dad to Oakland, and it was awesome. It was awesome. So
we may find ourselves together at a game one of these days soon.
It'd be great.
We'll have to set something up.
We'll
see if Stu gets to come though, because he might want to.
Yeah, what's up, man? I can't get an invite.
He's already the lead pilot, so I mean, we got to be careful here.
Hey, he'll fly us. He'll fly. That's my plan. That's our big business plan: is get to a point where Stu can be flying us around the country.
I love it, man. That's awesome.
Well, dude, this has been a ton of fun. Yeah. Let's seriously. Let's. I think we should do another one like down the road. I mean, I love this. This is so much fun. I really
We're
appreciate
gonna
you
have
coming on, man.
to we're gonna have to press his new book, his new audio book. So when
Yep.
that comes out,
Ah,
Good call.
it's a
Good
challenge.
All right. Well, anything else, Dave?
no, I think I really appreciate your time. Obviously, very busy man, but it's been a great hour. I know for Stu and I, super motivational. I think all our listeners will really appreciate just the mindset challenge, the action items challenge. Go to the website, get the book. I think those are all super actionable and can really change lives. So appreciate your time, Jason.
Oh man, it's the same thing here. I mean, I feel blessed that I get an opportunity to have some fellowship with you guys like we just did for the past hour. I mean, it's awesome, especially after a full day of work. I mean, there's nothing like connecting, right? That human connection, and all of us can make a difference, and that's what we've got to inspire people to do. So
Yeah, that's good stuff, man.
awesome
All right.
stuff, guys.
Well, everybody, hope you guys enjoyed it. Go check out Jason's website. Go buy his book, read it, get fired up, and more importantly, go fill your storehouse.
Make it a great day.
See you.
Chip.